in brand new remastered Technicolor.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to Two Queers.
One pod.
I'm Bridie.
I'm Imogen.
Yeah, how are you today, Imogen?
Doing all right, thank you.
You got your tea?
Got tea, you got yours?
Cheers. Clink. Yeah, and today we are talking about pronouns. That's fun.
Pronouns and gender and whatnot.
Yeah, and we've said that this isn't going to be the only episode where we cover gender and bits, because there's loads to unpack. So we're going to kind of do like a little part of it, and then we'll do sort of part 2 and 3 and so on as we progress.
So what pronouns do you use?
Generally, I'm happy with either she, her, or they, them. I've got a kind of back... Are we going to do like the backstories as to how we've got to this point? So, yeah, generally, I would say that with my pronouns and stuff, I didn't... Only up until about a year ago, or maybe just over a year, I thought more about sort of my own pronouns and how I want to identify myself, because I've already established my sexual identity to a point. And then I think it was because, I don't know how to explain it, but because I've been in kind of heterosexual relationships for about 5 years, I never really felt like I particularly even had to address like the sexual identity or the gender. I passed, so I was kind of like happy to just like cruise and not really have to think about it. And then as I was like on my own for about 3 months, I then started to kind of think about myself a bit more. It kind of made me like zone back in, and really kind of think about stuff. And when I really started to think about it was last summer, when me and my sister went to London to go to Legoland with our little Irish cousin for the day, which was so fun. And then the next day I was like, oh, I want to go to an exhibition, because that's just what you do when you're in London. And I kind of had a scroll through what was on, and there was one at South Bank called Kiss My Genders, and I was like, well, this sounds really interesting and really cool. And we went, and it was just one of those moments where you just kind of feel like, I guess, understood, and like it opened up parts of my mind where I was kind of like, just I'd never really considered it before. Obviously I knew that it was a thing, to obviously be trans or be gender non-conforming and stuff like that. And then I picked up this book, which I brought with me. Bam. It's called Is Gender Fluid? And and I remember reading it on the train home, and I was just like, oh shit, like this, honestly. And it's just one of those moments where you just realize something that you've never really thought about actually resonates with you so much. And then I thought about it a bit more, and I remember when I was growing up and things, I was always told that I wasn't very ladylike. Like, it was kind of like my mum would always say to me, like, love her, but she would always say to me, like, you know, don't sit like a man, because I would kind of sit like sprawled. And like when I would eat, she'd be like, it's a fork, not a shovel, because I would just so I was kind of brought up to be quite like prim and proper, as it were. It didn't work, but they, you know, try as they might kind of thing. And then as I got older, I kind of, I guess, do people still call each other tomboys now? Is that still a thing? Or have we moved on from that?
I mean, when you were younger, you were called that.
Yeah.
So,
and that was how it was kind of like, and I didn't, because I grew up in a very like sheltered bubble, I didn't know all these terms existed outside of it. So I kind of was like, yeah, I'm a tomboy. I wore like t-shirts and jeans my entire teenage years and all this kind of stuff. And I always felt kind of uncomfortable in my body, but I just thought that was because I was fatter than like society's norms. I thought it was more like a weight issue. And then when I was like 19...
And also just being a teenager
as
well.
fully. And like going through puberty and all that horrible nonsense. And then when I was about 19, 20, I lost like quite a lot of weight. And then I was like, well, I'm still miserable. So what is it? Like, what is the thing? And reading up on gender, and especially like non-binary and gender fluid people and stuff like that, it just kind of resonated with me because I'm bisexual, and obviously sexuality is a spectrum. Sitting inside of that spectrum makes me feel comfortable in my sexuality. And then I think realizing that gender is a spectrum as well, because growing up I did think it was male or female or you're trans, but you're still one or the other. And realizing that you can still
Did you know
sit
about
inside
trans people
that.
when you were little?
Not little. I knew, well, I think when I was, and it was all kind of television based, where I first kind of saw trans people. I remember the first kind of memory I have of anything like that was when I was younger and I was listening to Hallelujah by KD Lang. And I remember looking at her music video for that, and I remember asking my dad, are they a man or a woman? And I think my dad's response was something like basically trying to very delicately explain a lesbian to me. But I was like, oh yeah, fair enough. So I don't think I knew much about trans people until I was a bit older, because my interpretation was I knew more about sort of like drag queens from several Friends episodes and stuff like that, and how Chandler's dad is a trans woman, but they never say it. They have like boobs and they wear dresses and stuff in the episodes, but they never say like Chandler's dad is trans. They just say that they refer to them as Chandler's dad and that they are a drag queen and stuff like that. Let me catch up with myself.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was talking about the spectrum and how, for me personally, now that I know about it, knowing that gender is a spectrum and you can sit inside of that makes me more comfortable, because I don't feel like I want to fully commit to like either side of it. And then it is the kind of thing with me, when I think about it too much, I then just kind of stress over like, why do we have labels? And I know that they are so important for certain individuals, but at that point it's just like, can we just be fluid in all senses of the word? That would be my ideal
Just because you don't particularly identify with any one label, trying to pin down exactly what you are is just really stressful, whereas some people find comfort in the labels and
exactly
you don't, and that's
but
totally
generally fine. Now I'm sort of comfortable enough to say that I don't mind. I don't want to be referred to as he, him, but I'm comfortable with they, them, or she, her, because I know that people in my family have they're just at a certain point in their lives where they can't commit to not referring to me as that. So I don't mind it, because I am in certain ways comfortable with the feminine side of myself, but not completely. And that has only been a realization since being like a single person and having the time to kind of, especially with lockdown, really like think about myself in a way where I have no like external sort of factors to change that, where I was fully like on my own and had a lot of time to think. I've come out of it with that. And I remember, because you were there for this moment, when we went to the first drag show in Bristol that we went to together called Slaughterhouse, and it was kind of, you introduced yourself and it was, hey, like, what's your name and what are your pronouns, just as a kind of, and I remember saying like, I don't really know. Like, I was so like taken aback. I was like, just because someone so casually asked in like a really like welcoming way, I was like, I don't really know, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure that out. And they just said like, that's absolutely fine. And then gave me a hug. And I remember turning to you, even though they were still right next to me. I think I was a bit drunk, and just turning to you and going, oh my God, like, this is literally my favorite place on earth. And we've only been here for 5 minutes. Just because it was like, come as you are. It doesn't matter if you're trying to figure things out. It doesn't matter if you're different. We accept you. And it was
it doesn't
just kind
matter
of
if
like,
you say one thing this week and another thing next week. No one's going to
Exactly.
be like, no, I mean, you said.
exactly. But so that's my
where you're at.
my dealio. Yeah, and it's been very, it hasn't, for me, I'm quite lucky in that, well, I haven't actually like really expressed it to anyone in my family. Like, my friends, my closest friends are also like my family to me, and they're all kind of aware, but I haven't come out, as it were. Well, I am now, because it's going out on a podcast, but I just feel like that just makes me feel quite comfortable and settled, and I haven't been like scared about the realization, because it's kind of always been there, but only in the last kind of 12 months have I understood the terminology and been able to put a name to what I've been feeling. And in that realization, it has helped me feel like a lot more comfortable in my fleshy skin sack body.
Yeah, that's really wonderful that you've had that space. I was going to say something and then I got really distracted by the fleshy skin sack thing. It was a really
whenever
good,
I did you ever watch SpongeBob when you were a kid?
Not when I was a kid. I've watched it as an adult.
Fine. So because we say fleshy skin sack like probably like every so often, and it makes me think of when Mr. Krabs loses his shell and he's just running around like this little fleshy thing with like veins.
That's what we all are.
Yeah, exactly. We can learn a lot from him when he loses his shell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also I think it's this is what I was going to say. So we're having this conversation. I can't think exactly when International Day of Coming Out was or whatever it was, but there was a lot of discourse certainly online within the queer community about how we shouldn't put so much pressure on coming out, and that actually it's often the cis het population that puts pressure on people to come out, because you have to declare yourself as other.
Yeah.
Whereas in fact, like, there's no inherent need for you to come out as such, and also it's such an ongoing process, particularly for people that present a certain way. And when you have like kind of old-fashioned or traditional families and stuff like that, it's probably like more harm than good to rock the boat in those sorts of things. And obviously if that's what you want to do and that's what makes you feel the most yourself, then fucking go for it. But also you're under no obligation.
Absolutely. And it's not as if you can't live your like true self until you told everybody.
Yeah, because like honestly, every time you meet someone, because we still live in a society that makes the assumption of heterosexuality and cisgender experience, like everyone makes that assumption the moment they meet you, and so you'd have to come out to absolutely every individual that you ever meet. And oh god, I don't like, particularly when it comes to sexuality, I find it so weird that we have to come out to our families. Like we're seen as like that we have to, because quite frankly I don't feel the need to discuss my sex life with anyone that I'm related to, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, unless it's kind of like the odd amusing anecdote. I have no interest in going into the nitty-gritty of who I either choose to sleep with or who I happen to fall in love with. Like, I don't see how it's...
You wouldn't do that necessarily if you were straight, would you?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so maybe if I brought someone home for Christmas, like my family doesn't celebrate Christmas, but that's kind of the typical thing of like bringing someone home. Like, maybe there would need to be a conversation if I was bringing someone to a family function and like there were more traditional members there, where it would be like, oh, that's, Imogen's gal pal,
that's
or whatever. Like, that would be a thing perhaps to have a conversation about. But honestly, like, I have no intention of ever sitting anyone in my family down and going, oh, do you know who I like to fuck? Like, it's not. And also stuff to do with like my body and whatnot. Like, I'll have conversations with people about maybe how to refer to me for my like maximum comfort, but they don't need to know about like what choices I'm making in regards to like how I present myself, or if I was to take any kind of like medical intervention or whatever. It's no one else's fucking business.
Exactly. And also it's like when you come out to your family, or you were just saying how you're not going to turn up at Christmas and say like, I like to fuck this person. It's that thing where, especially with queer relationships, it's always, for cisgender people, always like boil it down. I'm generalizing. I mean, not everyone, but some boil it down to just the sexual element. Whereas in fact, and especially like religious family members, I know would boil it down to that, and kind of, because I've definitely got like super Catholic, and I haven't had a conversation, but I assume based on knowing them that they are homophobic and transphobic and things like that, and unwilling to listen. But it is just, but there's so much more to it, like with any relationship, than sex sometimes. And it's kind of like, why don't you ask me like anything? Do you know what I mean? Or why don't you think about it in any other light?
What they like to do with their like spare time, or like what their favorite flower is and stuff like that, you know, kind of stuff that makes us more human. But I don't really think that, because like I have taken, it's quite funny thinking back on it, but when I was younger I did take girls to family functions, and what's amusing is because I didn't come out as such, and I didn't say, oh, this is my date, like it was that kind of like, oh, it's just gals being pals type thing. And thinking back on it, the girl that I took to family functions and stuff, we did later end up sleeping together and stuff, but our relationship we weren't like together or anything, but like we were really good friends. And so she came with me to family functions, and then like kind of short later on, like we ended up that side of the relationship kind of expanded for a while. But if you don't start the conversation often, particularly in, I suppose, society or parts of society that are like my family, which is a little bit of like don't ask, don't tell, almost like people will fill in the narrative that makes them the most comfortable. And so people were just like, oh, she just, you know, she brought a friend. And I was like, yeah, sure, fine, absolutely, let's go with that. That's cool. So this girl is in like family photos with me. It's really fun, like, and we're mostly out of touch now, which is sad, but it's, thinking back on it is quite entertaining that no one batted an eyelid. And I think that does come with the privilege of being assigned female at birth, is that there is that cloak of sort of mystery over like lesbian relationships, in that way of where, because so much of sexuality is based around, particularly heterosexuality is based around like penetrative sex, the idea that a relationship that doesn't involve any sort of penetrative sex is kind of deemed null and void. So like men having sex with, or like kind of a cisgender man having sex with a cisgender man, oh my god, so many penises, much penetration, so much to get upset about. But like if you've got a cisgender woman sleeping with a cisgender woman, then people are kind of like, just gals being pals.
How does that work?
You know, if you really get into it with like kind of a drunk cishet man, then they'll be like, so scissoring. But like if you're just at a family function or whatever, then people are just like, yeah, just gals being pals. You know, you think about all of these famous women throughout history that if you look at them through a 2020 lens, you're just like, oh, obviously gay. But they were just like so fully under the radar. And like that's a full discussion about the erasure of kind of lesbian and bisexual women in relationships. It is a big thing, but there is a safety and a security in that privacy that you can be afforded.
Absolutely. And because with me, I've never like stood in front of my immediate family and said like, I'm gay and potentially non-binary. Haven't quite got to the point where I can fully like, but you know, I've never, but it's kind of like, I would never stand in front of them and go like, I like to shag boys sometimes too, as they would expect me to, not that they would expect me to say that, but it's like, as they would expect me to be straight potentially. I'm kind of now just like, I wouldn't come out straight to you, so I'm not going to, and I'm very lucky that I feel like I don't necessarily, part of it is that I'm afraid of what might happen, not necessarily with my immediate family, but because we are like a big Irish family and we occasionally have big sort of events together, and I have spoken to like cousins who come and speak to me about them thinking that their children might be gay, so it's all that kind of thing. But part of it is being afraid, but I think not necessarily because of the people that my family are, but just because it's like I'm comfortable with them I'm just comfortable not saying, like, announcing it. So if I can continue to live as I am without having to kind of go blah, they either know and they're kind of just waiting for me to say something or not. But I feel like I don't change based on whether or not I announce it. So to me, I'm comfortable with them just kind of, with just not addressing it, like you were saying. But did you want to talk about your pronouns if you are comfortable?
Yeah.
And your kind of journey getting to your journey.
Here's my journey. Well, I'll take any pronoun if I'm honest. generally I will think you're taking the piss if you use he, him, because I know what I look like and I know what society would therefore label me as, but I wouldn't be offended to be referred to as he, him. I remember being quite young and having a very short haircut and hearing a little kid say very loudly through what they didn't realise was an open car window, Daddy, why is that boy wearing a skirt? And I was like, interesting. So they're thinking, the haircut was sufficient for them to assign me a gender. The skirt was not. Interesting. And I remember, like, it didn't bother me. Like, I have had instances where people have assumed that I was a man.
Me too. Only because of the haircut.
Yeah, it is often the haircuts. But then they've been, and I remember Hannah Gadsby talks about this in Nanette, her stand-up show that's on Netflix, where someone has assumed that you're a man, and so they go to be physically aggressive with you, and then they realise that you're not a man, and so they apologise, but then they realise that you probably look gay because they confused you for a man.
Their brains are just like...
And so then they get aggressive again. And watching that process happen across someone's face when they're like, should I or should I not punch this individual, is fascinating. And I am fortunate that I find it more interesting than scary.
Yeah.
And it's happened to me on a number of occasions, and then you recount it to people and people go, oh, that's awful, and you go, if they'd actually hit me, perhaps.
Yeah.
But watching them struggle within themselves to figure out whether or not they'd be punching a woman and whether or not it would be bad is fascinating.
It is that kind of watching them do the maths and figure out that kind of like dichotomy of chivalry, but then like
homophobia,
fuck the gays. It's just like, do not compute.
And also it's interesting to have those different categories spelled out to you of man can punch, woman can't punch, dyke can punch, and watching that of like kind of, are women and dykes not the same thing? Not that these are people that necessarily I'm expecting to have some sort of intellectual discourse with, but it is interesting nonetheless. So there are a few factors that are worth touching on, I think, if we have the time, in regards to like my...
Just checking to see if we have the time. We have the
time.
time. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I would normally say that I use she or they pronouns. I'm most comfortable with they because that gives you the most flexibility, I think. And also, as much as she, her pronouns don't upset me, some of the other words, and I think that this is something else that you wanted to touch on as well, some of the other words associated with those pronouns do give me the ick.
Yes.
In a fundamental way. Because we were talking earlier about the use of the word lady. Bothersome.
It is so annoying. And before, like when I've been at work and someone goes, oh, let's go ask the lady over there, I want to just like, the thing is it gets like this visceral thing in me when I want to just turn around and go like, I'm not a fucking lady. But then it's like, then I kind of look at myself and I go, well, I mean, I can't really shout. Do you know what I mean? It's so like internally confusing. But I hate lady, and I just...
Have you watched The Good Place?
I've watched some of it, but then did not continue for no reason. I just got bored, I think. So
there's a character in that called Janet, who is the computer, kind of the sort of the main intellectual, technological powerhouse behind the entirety of kind of heaven and hell and everything in between. And she uses she, her pronouns, but she is distinctly not a girl. And every time one of the characters refers to as a girl or a woman, she will correct them and then keep going. And I felt so seen.
Yeah.
Because not only does she have a level of social ineptitude, which I felt very comforting. Just that constant thing of like every sentence she had to start, she had to be like, not a girl. And I feel a little bit like that, but in my own head, because I don't really want to be that guy. And I hate that I have that internalized censorship of myself.
Yeah.
Where I don't want to cause a fuss. I don't want to be picky. I don't want to be an issue about stuff. But I find it particularly because I have engaged in relationships with cishet men who would say that they are attracted solely to women.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to have to, or to consider having these discussions with them of being like, I'm not really a woman. And I remember seeing...
So let me tell you what this says about you.
Yeah, well, it's that thing of like, it doesn't have to say anything about them.
Exactly.
But I do remember seeing a meme that was like a tick box thing of I identify as, and it was like, not a girl, not a boy, tick, I don't know, but whatever it is, or like, if you're attracted to me, it makes you gay. And it was like... That's the thing. I'm not either, really. And something that, just going on from Janet from The Good Place, is that there is a huge... I do remember having a conversation with you about this once. There's a huge prevalence of transgender people in the autistic community. And it is something wild. Like, there are wild percentages about the gender nonconformity within people with neurodivergent brains, of which you are also part of that with your ADHD. But particularly within the autistic community, there are far more transgender people than in the general population. And I do remember having a conversation with you where you suggested that 36% of the global population was autistic, and I was like...
that was just me. That would have been a classic case of me reading something and going, oh, a fact, and then mixing it up.
And you going, yeah, that makes sense. And me going, no.
I think it was because it's like
not.
you, me and Lana were sat in a room.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Lana are not autistic. You are autistic.
Yeah,
so then in my head, it's 1 in 3.
33.3 recurring percent of the population of the people in this room.
Me getting facts wrong is a definite personality trait.
It's
and
totally fine.
I'm happy to be corrected.
At the time, I will admit, I felt a little bit upset that you hadn't maybe bothered to look into something that is such a fundamental part of who I am.
For sure.
I now understand a lot more, and also you understand a lot more. We've come a long way. This was a long time ago. But it is interesting that, and there is and this is me where it's like, I am not an arbiter of all wisdom. I don't know everything. I'm always learning. I remember reading the word autigender.
Okay.
As in an amalgamation of autism and gender. And my initial response was, fuck off! I have learned since then. And it makes sense that it is a word to describe gender where it is through the lens of the neurodivergent, neuroatypical brain. And my kind of hop, skip and a jump from that with my comprehension of gender is that when you have autism, you are less constrained by social norms because you either don't perceive them, you don't understand them, or you just aren't involved in them. And given the huge social elements of gender, whether you want to go as far as to say that it is purely a social construct, or whether you do want to say that there are elements of like biology and whatnot that are involved, no matter what you think about it, there are huge social components to it.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that that's what we're referring to is Western society and culture, because obviously in other globally it's treated differently. In some cases it's actually very well respected to be in, and I was reading about it in that book, is that it's like third gender, which is kind of,
yeah, I mean that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that just gender as a concept
Yeah.
has social implications,
Yeah.
and that is the same everywhere.
For sure.
Everywhere has their own ideas of, no matter how many genders you have, there are social implications
Yeah.
to it. And whether you actually acknowledge that there are intersex people is, not a very Western thing to do. But, there are biological elements that maybe are where the social things start. But no matter what you think, there are social implications.
Yeah.
And if your brain isn't wired to take on social things the same way as neurotypical people, then you can kind of avoid quite a lot of that. And so I, tail between my legs, will come back to the autigender people and go, I'm terribly sorry for not fully understanding. I thought by the word you were suggesting that autism is its own gender. And I got a bit overwhelmed by the concept, and I apologise profusely. I mean, I never said anything to anyone. But yeah, so it was... so it's an interesting thing to look into the numbers of gender incongruence or gender non-conformity within the autism community.
Definitely.
And what that says about the social implications. I definitely think your point about it being a Western thing is incredibly important, because we are absolutely at a disadvantage in growing up in a completely Western viewpoint, because it's so limiting. And I don't mean disadvantage in the sense of obviously massive privilege.
Yeah, in this particular part,
thing,
for sure.
We have to unlearn all of this to go, that's just what the West thinks.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
very
West,
like
in a very
pink and
specific,
blue. Yeah,
very specific and very modern. Like, I'm going to butcher this because I only know their Instagram handle, but it's I follow Alok V Menon.
Yes.
I think it might just be Alok Menon, perhaps.
I remember listening to them speak, and they might have pronounced their name Alok, but it's pedantic.
Alok. But yeah, I started following them on Goodreads. Bloody hell, they give the most thorough book reviews you've ever read, and they read prolifically.
Yeah.
All of these incredible sort of where academic text meets popular science, and it's kind of like the Venn diagram intersection between those two things. So it's not quite popular science, absolutely understandable for the masses, but it's not quite an academic text. I mean, they also read academic texts, but that's beyond me, honestly. But their breakdowns of these things has been so valuable, and they do like 5 main things I learned whilst reading this book. And they read so many books, and I read all of their reviews, which means I don't necessarily feel the need to read all of these books.
Yeah.
And it just absolutely blows my mind how fully modern and white and Western and Catholic all of these fuck-ups are to do with racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia. Like, those are your big 4, I suppose. Oh, and also ableism. Mm-hmm. That's another big old thing. And sort of Catholicism, and then moving on into capitalism. Like, we fucked this so royally for everyone except this absolutely tiny minority of already wealthy, able-bodied, straight, cisgender white men. And that's such a tiny percentage of the population that we've kind of made things work for. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. And obviously such a privilege that I've kind of only just realised this.
Yeah.
Obviously not that the world is built for those people. Been aware of that for a while. But the idea that this is so incredibly modern, and it's potentially could have been so avoidable.
Definitely. Yeah, what I was going to say was how you were saying it was modern is actually really true, and it's. But I think you're brought up to assume that that's just the way the world's always been.
Yeah, it's the way people are. It's absolutely not.
It really isn't. And, I was reading about kind of like, and you would like this sort of like your ancient Egypts and your Romes and your Greeces, and how in ancient Egypt women were like on par with men. It was, and there was a lot of like androgyny back then as well.
Everyone loved the eyeliner.
Women
couldn't stop anyone from wearing eyeliner.
Women could, have property, initiate divorce, all this kind of stuff. And I think, and then fast forward a fair bit, you've got the Industrial Revolution, women, and then they were like, oh, women, you can help out actually. And then war comes and it's like, oh no, actually, sorry, we need you to like be at home and look after your kids, or be wealthy enough to get people to look after your kids for you. And in certain cultures, it's seen as like a status symbol to be a woman doing nothing, having help, but not working. You can't work. You just have to be.
My mum used to work for the Foreign Office and worked in embassies and things, and all of these like ambassadors' wives were she just kind of watched these women who were very able in their own rights, but she just watched them disintegrate into daily gin drinking and gossiping and breathing in like peroxide fumes from getting their hair done all the time, because they had literally nothing to do, and just watched them like wither away.
And this is the thing with gender norms, is it is modern, but there has been enough saturation of this repetitive process where it's become our normality. But it is, when you look at it, it is Western society and culture. It's not biology. And it's not innate. It's learned through repetitive processes.
Yeah, and it's through like the past like kind of 500 or 600 years. If you think about like, obviously people like Queen Elizabeth I had a lot to contend with in regards to being a woman, and being a woman that didn't marry and didn't have children and like that kind of stuff. So when I say modern, I don't mean in the last 2 weeks.
No, of course
I do
not.
mean like in the last 1,000 years or something. But given how long we've been on the planet,
For sure.
and also given how long other civilizations managed without our interference and did so well, but then of course we've wiped out all records of these things because it was deemed like savage and like barbaric and all of these sorts of things. Because you think about like the Native Americans and just fucking native people, indigenous people everywhere, absolutely generally have the right idea about how you treat people, and individual characteristics being what makes a community stronger, because everyone has their,
rather than assigning these things. And that's, learning all about that has, I think, helped me come to terms with like my own identity and things, because it's, when you fully understand, it's not, when you fully understand other cultures embrace gender fluidity and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, okay, well, obviously I'm very privileged to have been born into where I've been born into, but in this respect, entirely, it isn't. Yeah, it's entirely based on where you get put when you're birthed into the world.
It's an absolute lottery.
Exactly, but then the fact that
it's like being born into a cult.
Yeah, definitely, and the fact that these other places and other cultures embrace it surely then means that our Western society and culture don't necessarily have it right.
And the fact that we fucking decimated all of these places.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's just wild. And again, something that we don't learn about in school, because we have a very whitewashed, very kind of rule Britannia education system. But it's just wild to think about like everything that is wrong in the world today in the year of our Lord 2020 and about how it all stems from fucking like colonialism. And it's just wild.
So I think we need to kind of wrap it up, but as we said at the start, we'll get into this. I think it would be really cool.
This is very much an introductory.
Yeah, and I think it'd be really cool to do like a kind of teachy lesson episode about the history of gender in these different cultures, because it's so bloody interesting
and important,
and helped, and it is something that helped me learn, like, understand myself. Just it's all to do with perspective. It's all to do with going, just because I've been brought up like this doesn't mean that now that you don't have to wait till you're an adult to do it, but you know, just because now I've got like more autonomy and more like organic thought, I can explore these other options. And I wanted to bring up before we close, so I found a new podcast on Spotify last night called Pronouns in Bio. They've got one episode out so far. I couldn't find them on Instagram though. But yeah, it came out a couple of weeks ago, and they had this absolutely hilarious, the whole episode was basically about the Matrix and how gender is actually explored a fair bit in the Matrix. I have only seen it once and I was younger, but what they were referencing kind of reminded me. So you've got Switch, who in the Matrix is a woman, but out of the Matrix is a man or something like that. But basically listen to the episode because it has so many really interesting insights. But the bit at the end that made me, and I was trying to go to sleep, but it was actually absolutely cracking me up, where they basically said that John Wick is a he/him lesbian, and they basically, there was just a sentence that said like Theon Greyjoy is a trans exclusionary radical feminist and features in John Wick Gender Avengers Assemble. So to understand how they got to that point, you seriously should listen to the episode because it was hilarious.
That does sound fantastic. Definitely a rabbit hole I'm excited to go down. But just to go on to back to the Matrix thing, that is canon. It was supposed to be an allegory for the trans experience because both of the directors are trans women. Yeah. And I saw all of the Twitter discourse about that recently, and people being like, stop trying to make everything gay retroactively. And then,
just is.
And then it was fucking like, I think, is it Lana? I always go to say Wazakowski, and that's the fucking one from...
Wazowski?
Yeah.
Mike Wazowski.
From bloody Monsters Inc. But you know the one I mean. And she was just like, mate, I'm the director. Like,
if anyone tell you.
Yeah, if anyone knows what this was supposed to be about.
It's like, no, it's about a guy who has a really cool coat and glasses and does cool things with his back.
It's just hilarious given the whole like red pill, blue pill thing, and like that.
I need to watch it again.
Absolutely, like I've only watched it once with a boyfriend that told me I would love it, which of course meant that I didn't love it because I'm stubborn.
I refuse.
Yeah, I'm stubborn. But with this lens, I'll happily go back to it. But yeah, given that went so fully into like incel dictionary.
But we
reclaim
it.
That must have been upsetting for them.
We should do a future episode then where we perhaps drunk review The Matrix. I think that'll be a good.
That'll be bonus that'll be bonus content for our Patreon.
Question of the week, yeah.
Me. See? What is the question of the week this week? Imogen.
If you could be a contestant on any television program, what would you choose?
So you know me, I'm an outgoing Leo. I want to be on all of them. If I could. No, I don't actually. But can you imagine me on University Challenge?
Knowing you as the rest of your chart.
Yeah.
You'd be fucking shitting yourself. You'd say, yeah, absolutely, I want to do that. And then it would come around to it and you'd have an absolute breakdown.
For sure.
Capricorn moon.
Exactly. When I was younger, I wanted to be on Big Brother, but now I just know that I would be the one that walks off. I'd be a full Gemma Collins. Fuck this shit, I'm out of here.
Get that fire exit door.
Yeah, get that fire exit door, I'm out. So no, and we did have a discussion about this before we started the episode, so I kind of want to steal your answer, but I want to, so I don't know if you want to say yours first.
No, you go for
it. But basically,
I can't remember what I said.
You said that you wanted to be on Taskmaster.
Right, that was why I asked the question.
Yeah, which would probably also definitely be my answer, because it's, the live element is not, you don't have to perform, you've done it with the other guy, it's all pre-filmed, and you trust that it's been edited in a humorous way that most often benefits you, unless you're one of the annoying ones that they have. Could be me, I don't know. But it's so fun. Like,
they also tell you at the very beginning to not try and be funny.
Exactly. And the whole like just like doing loads of different like silly challenges just takes me back to like when I used to be in guides, and like it's just so silly, and I just love the idea of it. So definitely would be on that. Potentially Come Dine With Me, but I just think it's a bit like I don't know. I don't think I would like the people that turn up to my house, based on extensive watching of it. I would do it if like my friends were on it, but yeah, I would probably say Taskmaster or Come Dine With Me. Nothing where I'm on a podium and I get asked questions because my brain just goes blank. It would have to be like anyone that's based on like intellectual question and answers, because I just can't, even while I'm saying this, I can't get my words out. So it's a no-go for me. But one where it's kind of like adventure based, like challenges, I would absolutely, and I really hope
like Naked and Afraid.
Yeah, I hope one day either we get respected as comedians, that we can go on it, or that there's like
team.
that it's like a non-copyrighted lower down version that we can join, or that we get the rights to create one that's like queer centric, and then we can be on it. We could be, oh my God, we can be Alex and Greg. Which I don't know who would be who. I think you'd be Greg.
Really?
Genuinely.
Amazing.
Genuinely. But because then that requires me to, but I do love a puzzle.
Then you'd be little Alex Horn.
I do love a puzzle, so I think I could come up with some good shit, but that's
that
me.
just means I have to be scary.
Yeah. But you also get like a little goblet with your face on it that you get to give out to someone, so.
I'd do it. I'd make it myself out of Fimo.
But yeah, so that's that.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be great at Taskmaster.
We really would
just
be.
in general. I mean, I'm sure everyone thinks
I wouldn't want to go on it. I would want us to go on it as like a team, like a two.
Yeah, just the two of us, like Jedward, when they used to get put on panel shows, but they'd always have to go together as a pair.
I just remembered Best of Friends. Did you ever used to watch that when you were a kid?
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever actually signed up, but when you'd be in the playground and you'd be like, yeah, I signed up for Best of Friends last night. I'll see you on it. Blah, blah, blah. I never actually did, but I would have that when I was younger, and it's not too dissimilar from Taskmaster. There's just a lot more like goo and putting your hands in like beans.
Yeah, fuck that.
But something like that where it's like you're a team and there's like performance-based challenges and puzzles. That is just my absolute dream. But yeah, I could go on about that for another 10 minutes, but I think we've got there. So yeah, should we wrap it up there? Or have you?
I mean, I also have an answer.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you
fine.
go. My bad. I thought we'd covered that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We could just say we both said Taskmaster, and that's fine. That's it. We're done.
Oh, right. I'm going to shut up now until we close the episode. You go.
No,
What was yours?
No, it's fine. I was going to say Great British Sewing Bee because let me in that.
Does that exist?
Yes. It is presented by Joe Lysett.
Oh, amazing. Does he sew?
No, but he's an artist.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
oh God, that sounds
it's lovely.
Stressful though.
It's
is it
charming.
time-based challenges?
Yes, it's exactly like Great British Bake Off, but with sewing.
Aww.
And I mean, I would do Bake Off if it was original Bake Off with Sue and Mel,
yeah,
and you know the good ones. But yeah, I just want to get in that haberdashery because the only reason I don't do more sewing is because I can't afford fucking fabric. So yeah, it's not a fun answer. It's just a true one.
Nice. That sounds really fun. I can't imagine like a bunch of people who sew being in such like a high. Do you know, like is it kind of like embroidery? Because these things take time.
No, it's like making a thing. It's like making a garment.
Oh,
like
okay.
Ready, set, make a dress.
Kind of like Drag Race then, when back in the seasons where they would make their own clothes.
Yeah, I mean it's just more like Bake Off, where you get given
like a big marquee.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like it's in a really nice studio in London next to the river, and it's like in the old like fabric milling district and stuff. It's really beautiful. It's really lovely. And then they're just like make a skirt immediately, and then it's like kind of here we've given you an ugly thing from Primark. Turn it into something interesting. You have 45 minutes.
If only like you could actually get like talking mice that sew from Cinderella to come and help you out.
I would be.
That would be so
the
fun.
talking mouse. I would love that. I would dress up as a mouse. I would be what's his name? Gus. I would be Gus.
Gus.
Yeah. And I would be there just eating. My mum compares me to Gus all the time.
That's cute.
Yeah, it is.
That's really cute.
Gus. Anyway, so yeah, that was like I said, not a funny answer, just a true one.
Amazing. Well, hopefully one day we get recognised for the hilarious people that we are, and we'll be asked to go on something one day.
One day.
Amazing. So cool. We've covered some good ground in this episode.
We've got a good podcast recommendation. That was
that
pronouns
was,
in
so
bio.
the first episode came out on the 12th of October, so I'm not sure where it's going to go, and I can't find them on social media. So even if it's just in that one episode,
just that
is
one
the legacy.
Nugget to
it
prize
was
forever.
Brilliant. Like I really, really enjoyed it. Cool. So yeah, we've been 2 Queers 1 Pod. Thank you very much for listening.
You can find us on Instagram at 2quiz1pod and also on Patreon.
Woohoo!
At 2quiz1pod. We are 2quiz1pod is creating podcasts and other queer content.
Love that. Love it. Cool.
So, yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye.
This podcast was produced by Harry Williams.
Chanel!